we're doing our draft position analysis. A week ago, we did the running backs, and it's Bijan Robinson and everybody else, essentially.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about where he's going. And we just kind of addressed it. Top quarterbacks in the draft. We know about Bryce Young. We know about Will Levis. We know about C.J. Stroud. Obviously, we've gotten Richardson has been moving up the list. Let's start at number 5. What are you thinking? Who is your number 5 guy that you think is going to go, and does he get picked up in the first round?
To me, this is a guy that's absolutely a first rounder, probably going to go top 10. But I have him at 5 where most people would have him at 4. It's Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
I think there's a quarterback that's going to go second or third round that's better than him. I wholly believe that. But Richardson can ball. And if you get him in a spot where he can sit and learn to throw the ball inside 15, 20 yards, then he becomes a very dangerous quarterback because that deep ball is elite. That accuracy on the deep ball is elite. He was throwing 60 yards on the money to guys he's never thrown to before.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, what knocked him down is he can't throw a consistently accurate ball within 20 yards.
Right.
Which is fixable.
Well, yeah. As something he can learn. For me, my number 5, and it wasn't that far off. Richardson's my 4. My 5 is Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker, I saw what he did at Virginia Tech, and it was not great. But once he got with Josh Heupel at Tennessee, once he started to get into that offense that he was able to work, it really kind of opened my eyes to his ability. And then you compare him to Richardson. I mean, look, Hendon Hooker, I think we talked about midseason. Like, Hendon Hooker seems like a more polished Anthony Richardson. You know, he's got it where he can get the passes. He can control the offense. He has the mobility. The only thing that drops him for me, and I mean, he just kind of got back into the top 5 for me, was that injury. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is any quarterback that's mobile, if you have that injury to the lower parts of your body, it's gonna present a red flag. But I hope that what we've seen thus, throughout last season and just his improvement from Virginia Tech to Tennessee can push him up there. That's my top 5. And since you just said it, I'll go for Anthony Richardson. I'm sorry. I was baffled. I watched a lot of him during the season and last year. And last year, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that, it was a dumpster fire out there. But they still almost beat Alabama. They came within 2 points of beating Alabama. You know what I mean? And he was solid, had over, I believe, 600 yards that season, and then comes back this year with Napier, a new coach, kind of in transition. And I didn't see what I wanted to see, but as far as, being accurate and everybody talked about reading the defense. But we discussed it last week, that play against Utah, where he scrambles to the right and he throws it and the lineman stops and turns around and then he does a spin out and hits the guy for a touchdown. You can't draw that stuff up. You know what I mean? I think that's the X factors that you look for in a quarterback. Obviously, with the combine, we've seen how his physical attributes, longest broad jump,
the freaking charts.
I mean, come on, man. So when people say you hear Cam Newton and you hear, was it Justin Fields? I see that.
I see that mixed together, 100%.
Right. Now, what we know about Cam Newton and Justin Fields is sometimes there's issues with some of those passes that you're like, damn, man, that was easy.
The easy throws,
Right. So that's going to be something, and I'm going to bring that to you. We said he needs to be in a place where he can learn, or maybe he can get worked on, that the coach can mold him and do something like that. Do you think somebody takes a shot? Or who's your 4? But do you think somebody takes a shot at just the ability?
I think the dream scenarios for Anthony Richardson, just like looking at team and kind of all that, is Seattle and Detroit. I personally don't want us to take him in the first round. I don't think we're in the spot to take a first round quarterback. I want to take a second or third round guy and develop him. But Seattle, man, if they sat there at 5 and took him, you've got Geno Smith, where realistically you can get out of that contract after this next season or even the third season, where Anthony Richardson can sit for a year or two.
Yeah.
We've seen what Pete Carroll does with these young quarterbacks, does very well with them.
Oh, yeah.
I think Seattle's a phenomenal fit. I don't know if they take him, but I think if somebody takes him with the ideal of sitting him, I think it works out very well in the next few years. Yeah. My number 4, we just flipped. I have Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
And what slid him up to 4 for me was all the reports that he's going to be ready to go for training camp.
Mm-hmm.
He was off the crutches by Super Bowl week, which was very fast.
Oh, yeah.
But he was moving well. Sounds like by the end of March, he's going to be running, which bodes very well.
Oh, yeah.
If everything keeps going on par and he's ready to go for training camp, this guy was the Heisman front runner essentially until he got hurt.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And yes, you mentioned the Virginia Tech, which was kind of, it was worrisome for me, but I just went back this year and I didn't even watch for the highlights or anything. I went and watched his mechanics, and they are so far improved from Virginia Tech. It's like a whole different quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I listened to a few of his interviews where he's this running quarterback per se, but he wants to sit in the pocket and throw.
Yep.
He's like, I'll run if I have to, but I'd rather sit and throw.
Yeah.
Which to me is just like, yes, please.
Yeah, exactly.
He screams Justin Fields to me too, honestly.
Yeah.
That guy that can throw it all over the field. He's got a good arm, a very good arm, and can run, but would rather just kind of sit back and throw.
Yeah.
I've loved watching Hendon Hooker, and honestly, that's the guy I want in the second round. That when I said second or third round quarterback, I want Hendon Hooker.
That's him.
I want him to sit for a couple years behind Jared Goff and then take over.
Oh, I could see it. And hey, we talked about the number one thing about him is that he can be coached. He can be coached. He can be taught how to work and molded and everything like that. So, hey, I think that'd be a great pick for you guys. Absolutely. Somebody to sit behind Goff. He's got movement, and to work with those emerging weapons that you guys have. Woo!
Hendon Hooker with Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yes, please.
Come on now. Right? Yo, so where are you going at number 3?
Number 3, I'm still going Levis is 3 of the top 3 quarterbacks. He's very raw. He's got a lot to work on still. But you can't deny the tape from the 2021 season.
Right.
He was electric. There's a reason that from the start of the season, everyone was kind of pushing him up to the top of the draft boards because you see the potential in him. He's another guy kind of like Anthony Richardson, should probably sit for a year. But I see a very realistic scenario where 5 years down the road, he's probably the best quarterback out of these guys.
Oh, I can see it. Oh, yeah.
To me, just the arm, the ability to move around. If you teach him how to read a defense, it's over. He's the best of these guys.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So for me, and this has everything to do with size, and I know you discussed it earlier, this is where I kind of drop Bryce Young. Not by his accolades, not by everything that he's done. And for me, it's really 1A, 1-2, 1A, 1B, and 1C. Because if you have that pick, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these 3 quarterbacks, saying that you have the right coaching. You know what I mean? I mean, I like what Levis might be able to bring to a Carolina, but I also like C.J. Stroud. I also like a Bryce Young. But for me, my number 3, I think I have to go with Bryce Young. And for me, it's just the size. It's just we're playing with guys that are just as quick, just as agile, and that are 200, 300 flipping pounds and 6 foot whatever. I mean, look, I was scared for Devonta Smith when he came in the league, and he's proven himself. Shout out to him. And I have no doubt that Bryce is going to prove himself. But on this, I got to put him at number 3. And I hate to do that because of, like you said, he only had Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, he literally won that Texas game himself, and it took everything he had. So,
and he's the reason they were in overtime with LSU and like.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not doing this because I think he's any less than. I just think how it will translate in the NFL, I think he will be the 3rd off the board because he's going to need a line. He's going to need a little bit of help just because that wear and tear is going to get to you. That wear and tear is going to get to you. So, and then with that being said, my number 2 is Will Levis. I think he has the bigger upside. He's got that pro style. I mean, a lot of people, they dog for what he did this year. He didn't have Chris Rodriguez for his first 4 weeks. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He went up against a solid SEC with a number of those defenses being legitimate. Like Will Levis, we all saw what he was coming into this year, but I think this year what he showed me was that he can handle the adversity. He can handle kind of the pressure and the attention. You know what I mean? We saw some of these guys that were hyped preseason and then just didn't pan out during the regular season. But Will Levis, like you said, moved up the draft board last year, and I think his size and just mechanics have put him at number 2. What do you think? Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Bryce Young. And I'm the same with you. It's 1A, 1B, 1C. Now 1A is a little further from 1B and 1C, but these two are razor thin close to each other. It'll probably flip 10 times before draft day. I'll see something on one and it's like, oh, he's better than this guy, and then no, it's back. It's back. It's back. Like and that happens with a lot of these positions, but man, it's just if you go and watch mechanics, Bryce Young, for somebody that has to move around that much, just his ability to throw on the run is insane. Yep. Like you watch that LSU touchdown where he's running for his life and spinning away from guys and then launches that laser, and I know the guy's wide open. Yeah. But the ability to hit that throw while on the move like that and how much you're moving was ridiculous. He's just a phenomenal talent. You just, like we've said, you worry about him taking the shots, but depending on where he goes, these top teams that are looking at a quarterback, Carolina has a pretty good offensive line. You fix that interior a little bit, it's solid. Indy, if they get the tackles fixed, is solid. And Houston is a guard and maybe a center away from having a good offensive line too. Oh yeah. So you look at those teams, and even Seattle's got a pretty good offensive line, a guard or center away from being a good offensive line too. So the offensive lines that he's probably going to play behind, I don't worry too much. Mm-hmm. It's just he can't get skittish back there. He's got to sit and make the throw. Yeah. Because, like I said earlier, it's the NFL. You're not going to be able to run around as much as you did in college. You're not going to get away from these guys like you did every Saturday because the guys are just as fast, if not faster than you. Yep. They're bigger, they're stronger. Like, it's just you're 20 playing against 25, 30, 35-year-olds that have been doing it and been bigger, stronger, faster for a long time. So if he can just sit, make the throws, and trust the offensive line he has in front of him, he could be a special quarterback in the NFL.
No, absolutely. He has the intangibles. You talk about the LSU game. I talked about the Alabama game. Those last couple of plays, I mean, he was sacked. They had taken him in, but, he was able to maneuver out of that and just stay alive. The ability to do that has given rise to the Kyler Murrays, given rise to some of these quarterbacks that might
Russell Wilson.
Exactly. That might not have the physical attributes on paper, but the intangibles, you can't measure those. So I'm 100% with you, but I do also agree with you that number 1 by and far, and I feel for you because I know this is hard for you to say, but it's CJ Stroud. He's that guy, man.
Yeah. Now I will say, like, neither of these guys were the top quarterback in college football this past year. I mean, it was Caleb Williams. Yeah. Who was arguably the best player in college football. I mean, Jalen Carter, Will Anderson had something to say about that, but to me, all these quarterbacks are very solid. Next year's quarterback class is kind of the crop of quarterbacks.
Oh, yes.
Especially if your boy decides to come out too.
Ooh, oh, man. That'd be interesting.
And just one more thing with Bryce Young. Everyone hypes up Hendon Hooker for that Alabama game. We forget that it was like a 2-3 point game, and Bryce Young was going toe-to-toe with him for 60 minutes.
Exactly.
So
put 49 points up. Was it 52-49? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a hell of a day too. So, but yeah, Stroud is absolutely my number one quarterback in this draft. He screams MVP season Carson Wentz to me.
Ooh, okay.
Like that level of potential. He can run. He's sneaky athletic. He doesn't show it off very much, but if he has to get out, he can. And can make all the throws. I mean, we saw him dot up the field with Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. And before with JSN and Olave and Garrett Wilson. And like, he's had first round receivers, but you could argue he made them first round receivers. So, I mean, CJ Stroud is a phenomenal player. I hope the kind of Ohio State quarterback trend stops here because Fields was elite and then Stroud was elite.
Right.
And we haven't really heard much about this new guy, so I hope he's not.
Cut it right there, right?
Yeah, we can stop now. But
right.
Stroud is a phenomenal quarterback, and I think he does very well in the NFL.
Absolutely. And hey, we talk about tape. If there's anything you need to see, you go back and look at that national semifinal against Georgia.
Oh.
A team, look, Georgia was not touched most of this year. And not only did Ohio State, led by CJ Stroud, put in work, they had them at two separate times. They were up by double digits, right? At
two separate times. Yep.
And when the game counted and he needed to lead his team down there, Stroud drove his team down and put it in position for a kicker. You only have one job, kicker. You have one job. All right.
And it wasn't like it was that far of a field goal either.
Come on, man. I was mad. Ladies and gentlemen, I know y'all. You were not. I know you were. You wanted Jordan to win. I was upset because I was like, you came this far. He put you in position to win it, and the kick. It would be one thing if it was like, oh, it's drifting, it's wide. No, that thing was.
It was gone. It was off from the moment the foot touched the ball. It was so like, far off. It wasn't even funny.
And so that for me, that messed me up just because. Well, it was either or for me. My team wasn't in. By that time, you guys were out. So it was like TCU was going. I just didn't care. But for me, what he did in that game, you know what I mean? Having to be up and having the joys of being up. And then, hey, the mighty giant comes back. But you have an opportunity against the best defense in the country. And you were still able to drive your team down the field to put them in position.
Without Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm just saying. Like, I think that for me elevated him above the other guys. We've seen how he played. You've seen it up close and personal. I mean, the guy with the receivers, with the running backs, without, he's just consistent and it's fluid. It's hitting it. Like you were saying at the combine, hitting the dots. Yeah. I want to see his pro day. But yeah, that's where I'm at, man. I'm 100% with you.
You talk about that Georgia game. He took away my one knock I had on him from that. Like, from watching the Michigan games and watching a few of the other games, it was if you got pressure on him, he crumbled. Yeah. Georgia was in his lap all day, and that's a good offensive line. It's just Georgia's got 5 stars all over that defensive line. So they were in his lap all day. They were in his grill, smoking him. They were hitting him hard, and he kept getting up and kept balling. So for me, it was my one knock on him was he crumbles under pressure. He did not the last game we saw him on the field. So to me, that was his one knock, and I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will see. Shout out to Scott paying attention. Said the draft was some BS. You can never tell who's going to make the transition to the NFL.
Here's the thing, though. It's not the player talent that decides whether or not they succeed in the NFL. It's what franchise do they go to? How does that franchise work on integrating the rookie into the system? How does the player deal with the new pressure? How does the player deal with money? Like, how are they off the field when it comes to the money? How is it like, how are they in the film room? How are they in the weight room? There's so many factors that comes into a college prospect being a successful NFL player.
Right.
That you're right. It is so difficult to tell who's going to transition to the NFL because, I mean, notice we talked about all these quarterbacks and we said they could be amazing in the NFL. They could also be out of the league within 2 years. We don't know. Right. You got to wait and see with every single player picked from 1 to 275 or whatever pick is last this year.
Exactly. And a guy that we'll talk about a little bit later, Brock Purdy, is prime example of that. You know what I mean? They dubbed him Mr. Irrelevant, but as we saw, hey, when the time came, he came and was able to put on the team. Now, that team had a lot of weapons. That team had great coaching and it had number one defense in the league. So on one side, you could say, oh, well, he didn't have to do much, but he still has to take the snaps, make the reads, call the plays. You know what I mean? So he still.
We saw what happened once he got hurt.
Prime example. There you go. Absolutely. I will do this one because it can't go. Do you think Baker Mayfield will be the answer for the Rams if Stafford is dealt? I would like to see how he does with Cooper Kupp healthy. If not, do they go through the draft or free agency? Do you think the Rams would go through the draft?
I think Baker Mayfield's the guy. If Stafford's back, Baker's the backup.
Yep.
I do fully believe he's an LA Ram this year. I think he re-signs.
Yeah.
And that's the reason Stafford is. Well, they're trying to shop Stafford. He's not going to be traded. There's too much money involved. Yeah. Like $70 million guaranteed over the next 2 seasons as of March 17th. So yeah, he's not being dealt. Yeah. But Baker Mayfield's the guy they want out there, essentially. Yeah. I don't think they would go quarterback through the draft because they're tearing it down. Yeah. That's what they're doing. So they're probably eyeing quarterbacks in 2024. This is where you use this draft to kind of get the pieces around that future quarterback and start kind of rebuilding this defense. Yeah, a left tackle would be amazing. Yeah. Well, an offensive line in general. Another receiving threat outside of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And they're tearing apart that defense right now, so you need pieces all over that defense. So,
absolutely.
They got a lot of work to do for a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago.
Right. And look, they built it all up for that year. They were able to get it done. Shout out to them, but this was to be expected. So we'll see. Quarterback, maybe not, but you definitely need to make some moves in the draft. And early and often, you need to solidify some of those positions. Because if you do have Matthew Stafford stay, which is most likely what's going to happen, you're going to need to protect him. He's already taken, you can attest to this, he's already taken a beating in those years in Detroit. You got him. Yeah. You got to a chip. Now take care of the guy. You need. And
he had that nasty concussion this year, the elbow injury. Yeah. Like he had a lot to go through just this past year alone. So
let me ask you what. I love Stafford, and I know you have a love for this guy.
Oh, that's my guy.
What would make you stay longer? You got your title. You've gotten, the stats, the accolades. You've done everything you've done in Detroit and now the Rams. Outside of just loving the game, I mean, his body's got to be riddled.
It's because then this you play too. It's so hard to walk away.
Yep.
Like for me, I walked away, sat out a year, came back again. Like it's so hard to walk away and stay away, and we saw it with Brady too. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's not about the money. It's that competitor. It's that dog in him. And same thing with Tua. He had 3 concussions, 2 pretty serious ones.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no doubt I'm going back out there next year. It's just that it's that competitor. It's that dog in you. You don't get very long to play this game.
Right.
So they're trying to make it last as long as they can. Is it the right decision? Absolutely not. Both of them should retire and walk away.
Yes.
But neither of them are going to.
No. Yeah, it's hard to do that. My last game, I stayed on the field in my full uniform for hours after the game, smelling the grass, reliving the entire game. Like, I still have memories of that day. And, we had a whole bunch of stuff planned. And I said, I don't want to do any of it. Like, this is the last time I'm ever going to play. And it kills you. So, I absolutely get that. Real quick, do you think there's another Patrick Mahomes in this year's draft or next year? Next year, Caleb Williams?
I would say next year there's a few guys that could potentially be that caliber of player, but not this year. I don't see one this year. Like I said, my best guy is Stroud, and I see his ceiling is the MVP level Wentz, which is an elite quarterback.
Oh yeah.
But that's if he gets to that level.
Yeah. with the
And
pieces that are on that
better
team.
than MVP wins.
Right. So we can definitely see. Now, look, we've talked about who the top guys are, and most of you guys know them. Oh, this guy. You know what? I will say this, man. You are consistent. I am with that. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you like that clip, be sure to check out the other great content from the Let's Talk Football community. And as always, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when more great content like this becomes available.